Welcome to the Loyalty Program Builders podcast, where together with the top industry experts, we discuss business and technical challenges of implementing and running loyalty programs. Loyalty programs are complex. That's why together with our guests, we make difficult processes easy to understand and provide actionable steps to reach your loyalty program goals. Subscribe to our newsletter and become a part of a community dedicated to loyalty program excellence. Hey everyone! Today we're discussing the first 90 days after launching a loyalty program. The goal of the episode is to help you identify the most important things to get right from the start. And our guest is Charlie Hales, Managing Director and Head of Strategy at Mando Connect. She and her team work closely with programs that are seeking to initiate transformative changes. She sees data-fueled partnerships and rewards as the key to unlocking a program's full potential. Just like me, she's very passionate about developing actionable insights for the loyalty industry. She's the author of the What Brits Want series of white papers on loyalty and promotions, an editor-at-large for The Wise Marketer, a member of the faculty of the Loyalty Academy, and regularly contributes to Loyalty Press, conferences and podcasts. So without further ado, here's Charlie. Hi Charlie, great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Brilliant. So today we are going to talk about the first 90 days after the launch of the loyalty program. So if you could just give us a brief overview of what happens during those first 90 days.
Chaos, I think. Chaos and panic and lots of running around and then lots of great moments as well. It's such a roller coaster. I think when you create a program, most brands have put so much thought into it. You can have been working on it for 2 years before that launch day. And then that first 90 days is the really exciting bit, but it's also the terrifying bit. I think it's such a roller coaster. So in terms of, I know you asked me to prepare, what happens? What are the key things to be thinking about in those first 90 days? And I think the first thing that struck me when I was thinking about that question and reflecting on my own experience is that it's not really the same. We're privileged to work on a number of programs with Vodafone, with Lidl, with BMW. We've been through that first 90 days. And actually, there's two things I think that really stand out and that are the same no matter where you are in the cycle. I think the first priority really is to make sure that it works. So you put so much effort into it as the development team. You have creative team, you have a platform team, you have a rewards team, you have partnerships team, you have client teams and stakeholders and research teams and analysts all working together on the perception that actually once you've launched it, it works. And I think one of my key things I would advise all the listeners everywhere is to check that from a consumer point of view, because by the time you've been working on a program for 2 years, you know it inside out. And what you think is an obvious piece of communication or a simple user experience, no matter how much you've tested it before, once it's in the real world, it might not be. So I think that's really the first thing, to take a forensic view of every element of the program, the customer experience, the analytics, the frontline experience, what your internal stakeholders, and just check and test and see if it's actually working as it should and if people are understanding it in the way they should. And you'll get some great learnings as part of that, actually, and you might discover things that are even more brilliant than you realised. And then my second point in that first 90 days is that loyalty is a really long journey, and you need to remember when you're designing a program that you're designing it for the long term and for the long-term consumer experience. And that first 90 days is really scary, and you need to be really careful that you don't knee-jerk reaction and change something instantly because of one poor customer experience or one staff member that didn't quite get it right. You need to make sure that what you're learning is real and a true reflection of the real world, and then tweak and evolve and improve whatever you're doing iteratively. I think we've had some moments, certainly in those first 90 days, where you think, I'm sure you're the same, I know we're on a podcast, but you're smiling back at me, from Open Loyalty, where you've got one sort of thing that feels like a catastrophe and you need to check that it's real before you then go and make those big changes. So those are my two key things. No matter what your first 90 days looks like, what development journey you've been on from pilot to MVP to full launch, is just to make sure that make sure it works and then start to learn. But just remember that you're in it for the long haul. Those would be my top two.
This is brilliant. I really appreciate that. And I think that, it's like you can apply it almost to every bigger project. So this is great. And you've mentioned the learning as a very important part. So if we could discuss maybe the most critical learning loops from your point of view in the first 90 days, how to make sure that we actually learn and how to make sure that we learn the right things.
I love that word, actually, that use of the learning loop, actually. That's kind of how we think about things as well. It's iterative learning. You need to learn something, improve it, see if it's better, learn again, learn again, learn again. And I think you've got to make sure that you're in that mentality of learning every single day. I think the most important learning loops to set up really depend on your brand, your sector and your program and what you're trying to achieve. Again, I don't think there's really a one size fits all. I think some programs are set up to drive incremental revenue. Some programs are set up to learn about their audience. Some programs are set up to actually create a whole new user experience. So whatever your primary KPI is, whatever your primary reason to exist is, that's what you need to be focusing on first and foremost. So if, for example, you're in a business that is really focused on revenue or incrementality from the program, that's where you need to make sure that actually you can prove at the end of those first 90 days, this is what we achieved. And that means a really close partnership with your commercial team, a really close partnership with your platform provider to make sure that the basic analytics are working and actually that the two are integrated. There's no point knowing if you've got 1,000 members in the program, for example, but you can't see them back in the business. And so you don't know what value they're bringing back in. So primary KPI should be your area of focus. And then I think secondary to that, there are some basic tenets that loyalty programs everywhere need to get right. The first and foremost one is we're in loyalty to build meaningful, engaging relationships with our customers or the people that we want in the program. So you have to remember I'm a strategist, but that would be my natural starting point, which is to make sure that the learning loop back from your audience and your members is really powerful and really strong. And most programs start with behavioral analytics. So looking at active rates, sign-ups, what are people doing when they're in the loyalty program? And I think that's your bare minimum. We always like to overlay a qualitative or a quantitative view as well to get attitudes and actually what are people liking? What are they enjoying? How would they like to see improvements? And that can be done through a program. It can be done through your customer call centers, your frontline staff, actually just going out and talking to people that have downloaded it. But I think it's really important. It's quite easy to stop at the dashboard. I see it quite a lot. I've got a lovely dashboard. And you're like, great, that's the beginning of the story. It's really important to understand how this thing makes people feel. So that would be my universal. It's really important to get that customer learning loop back up. And then after that, I think there are some really natural areas that have differing levels of priority within the business. I went to a really interesting conference in March in Zurich, the Loyalty Summit, and one of the great speakers there, Michael Killeen, talked about the importance of CX and actually that it's not your customer who's king, it's your staff and your frontline teams and your associates, your advocates, your team members, whatever their name is, that are actually out there dealing with your customers and communicating about the program and talking about the program. So I think that's a really important feedback loop that can sometimes get forgotten. What's working, what isn't working, what do they want to see in the program, and being really important. And those are the sort of two customer focused ones, the frontline staff and then the customer feedback. And then behind that, obviously the commercials. It's normally the primary KPI, so it's normally covered off in that first point of call, but really important to track your budget and your impact, and be that, however your business measures impact, be that reduction in churn, increased spend, increased frequency, wherever the value is coming from this program.
Brilliant. Sure. I mean, it's quite complex, but definitely, the areas that you've discussed is going to be really helpful for our audience. And perhaps we could talk about the biggest opportunities there are within those 90 days.
Oh, that's really hard. I think the biggest opportunity actually is to have a really big celebration and not forget what you've achieved. Some people, as we said, will have done an MVP. Some people might have had a pilot phase. I know of programs that were sort of 5-6 years in development, and also ones that were launched in 2 weeks. So make sure you celebrate the achievement of bringing something, to the market. That actually is new for your customers and is about giving back to your customers and could potentially be a revolutionary new piece of the marketing toolkit for your team. So celebrate widely and then talk about the program and how great it is. I think that's the biggest opportunity that often gets overlooked. You launch the thing and then suddenly you're in the thing of running it, and then you're too busy to sort of step back and go, wow, look what we've created. So I think that's a really important opportunity. And then after that, the more sort of sensible opportunities then is really the customer opportunity. So to sit there and think about what were our ambitions for our impact on our customers, and to look at those transactional metrics. So spend, frequency, longevity, tenure, whatever drives value in your business. Also, there's really important attitudinal metrics. I think the obvious ones, around liking, satisfaction, awareness, understanding, potentially pushing up to love and recommendation. That'd be tough in the first 90 days, but important to kind of have the end goals in sight. But then also I think it can be interesting to look at the impact on your overall brand perception of the program as well. So as well as what do they think of the program, what impact is it having on your business? It's what impact is it having on your perception of your brand? And I think that's a huge opportunity for programs. I went to a really good conference last year actually with the DMA in GB. And the team who run Tesco Clubcard did a really interesting program about how Tesco Clubcard always operates in service to the brand, and everything they do is about enhancing the core brand values and the core brand experience of Tesco. And then they sort of brought that to life with stories about how they've done that with the subscription tier, with Tesco Clubcard Plus, with Clubcard pricing, which has taken the British market by storm, and actually demonstrating how each of those things is in service to the brand. And I think that is perhaps a big opportunity for loyalty programs, as well as developing a great program. But it's actually, how can I operate in service to the brand? How can I encourage brand appropriate behaviors? How can I deliver brand appropriate rewards? And it's become a bit of a mantra for us at Mando Connect. Actually, everything we're trying to do and create is always about that loyalty program in service to the brand. So I think celebrate, big opportunity, but then actually think big. Think about what your program can do to help your brand and the brand that you operate as part of, do better, be better, and help those customers build more meaningful bonds with your brand.
I really like the one about celebrations because it's true. I tend to neglect it. So very often, we are working towards the launch, then we launch and then we operate. We focus on optimizing, but actually it is so important to actually give yourself some time to enjoy it, to just have this sense of accomplishment. And then also what you said, that the whole program should enhance the brand at all times. So this is great. So perhaps, what about the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I mean, we would use a phrase in Britain called squeaky bum time, which Ryan Reynolds has just made famous actually through the Wrexham partnership. He talks about quite famously how he's learnt what this phrase means. I think it's, it's quite unique to Britain, but it's scary. You're quite tense. You're quite afraid. Have we done the right thing? Have we got it right? The unexpected happens in loyalty. You can give out a reward that you think is a fantastic reward and actually people don't like it. Or, you create a campaign on social media that has an effect that you didn't anticipate. So I think it's about holding your nerve through those squeaky bum times and keeping sight of the bigger picture and what you're trying to achieve, and making sure that if you are going to change things, which we absolutely should, you can be very agile in loyalty, you can experiment, you can move fast, but just to make sure that they're real things that you want. So I think that's the biggest challenge, that kind of holding your nerve. And then the other thing I think is almost we can be overwhelmed by the size of the opportunity. So when, I've worked in marketing communications my whole career, when you launch a campaign, it's quite a specific campaign and you might have 3 or 4 prongs to it. But when you launch a loyalty program, you're actually creating almost a new business within a business. And even as we've talked today, you're thinking about customers, external stakeholders, impact on the brand, the commercial team, the IT team, the platform provider, the reward provider, the reward partners that you have, the other partners that are part of the program through sponsorship or for acquiring acquiring new members. You've got, if you're a coalition, you've got, side-by-side partners, developing the program with you. So I think there's so much, and they can become so big that it can almost become overwhelming in terms of what do I address. And so I like to have a top three. My CEO talks often about the difference between the urgent and the important, but I think it's, what are the top three priorities for us for, however your business works. If you're an agile business and you work in sprints, but for the next 2 weeks, we're going to prioritize on this thing and tick it off the list. And then we're going to look at the next thing. And then we're going to look at the next thing. And to balance the reactive stuff you have to do with the higher level things that you really want to do as well, and making sure that you're getting good representation of both of those things in your level of work. So hold your nerve and then prioritize, because they can become, universes of to-do lists. They can get very big very fast.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for that, because it does really help you navigate through uncertainty. So if you have like a list of priorities, and I also like the idea of the three, it helps so much. So definitely this is great. And now if we could discuss something I love the most, so it's like, case studies, something that is actually representing reality in detail. So if you could, I know that you have plenty of case studies to share. So if you could share with us a few that you find most relevant.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And first 90 days is a real privilege. I think, we worked on existing programs, legacy programs. In Britain, we have programs that have been around for over 20 years, and you're always evolving them, or you're on a project as part of them. But to be there at the beginning is quite an honor. And it's one of my favorite things, actually, when you can remember, when the loyalty program was a glint in someone's eye. And then suddenly, a few years later, you're up on stage winning awards for it. And that's certainly the journey that we've been on with, a couple of the programs that we work on. And it's definitely my favorite, and the other thing I love is when you think something's going to work and then it doesn't for a really good reason, but then you learn a new thing that does work and you think, oh, actually that's much better. We'll pivot to that. And that's my favorite thing. I think it's very rare that the initial ambition, is exactly the execution. So I was going to talk about a few case studies of different sorts of models. We tend to find when we're developing a program that we go through a few stages with a brand. So we will go through concepting stage. What could the program look like? What could it be? A lot of strategy work, a lot of looking at other programs to see what they're doing, a lot of business modeling, a lot of budgeting. Everybody always wants to know what the budget is before you have the idea. I always think that's really counterintuitive. It's like we need to work out what the idea is for the audience and the brand, and then we'll cost it, not the other way around. But it's a really interesting approach to go through. So in terms of some case studies to pull out, we went on a journey with BMW Inside Edge, which was really interesting. I was a finalist this year at the International Loyalty Awards for Best Loyalty Program, and it really leads the way in its sector. There aren't any other brands undertaking activity like this, particularly at the moment. And what BMW recognized is that they wanted to create an exceptional BMW brand experience for their company car drivers to match their direct consumer sales drivers, and there wasn't anything in place. And so what we did with BMW, as you can imagine, an extraordinary level of precision, an extraordinary level of understanding what that audience really wanted, who they were, what would matter to them, what would fit the brand, and actually what would help to create that unique BMW brand experience for them. And as part of that journey, we went through a strategy and a scoping phase to do the research, do the desk work, do the consumer research to understand what the concept and the proposition was. We then went through a pilot phase where actually we piloted a small version of the program with a small number of BMW company car drivers to make sure that actually what we're creating was of the right standard and was at the right level. And, that was a really interesting team to be part of, leading for the rewards and the partnerships component of that, and then the strategy, and then with a platform provider as well. And obviously the in-house brand team, the in-house digital team, and their creative and comms agencies as well. So a lot of that was about building us as a team, building the proposition, testing it, tweaking it until it was ready for kind of full launch. And I think that was a really interesting model for a brand where brand experience is so important. We couldn't just have an idea and test it in market. We had to, build it, research it, test it, pilot it and then launch it. And that program's gone on to great success. And we now find that we're on an evolution model with that program because so much thinking went into getting it right. Actually, we're just evolving it over time. So I think that's one really good case study to look up. Another case study that I know you and I share in common is our love of Lidl Plus, winner of Best Programme in Western Europe this year at the International Loyalty Awards, sort of internationally lauded programme. I think everybody loves it for its positive disruption. The fact that, it looked at the grocery model and went, nope, not for us. We're not going to do a points program. We're going to do it our way, unique to Lidl. And what I think is fantastic about that program in particular is how they learn from each of the other markets. It's in so many markets now. I remember when it was only in one or two, when it was a glint in the eye. And I certainly remember being part of the team that launched it in Great Britain. And the opportunity there is to learn from others. And I think that's what they've done really well, which is every time they look at it, they look at the other markets, they talk across the countries to understand what's working in your market, what isn't working in your market. How is my market different to your market? We did the European white paper that Carl of obviously Open Loyalty contributed to, and that was really interesting, looking at the subtle variations across 24 European markets for membership appeal and impact. And Lidl are masters, I think, at looking at that and then adapting their approach in market. So I think that's another really good case study. And the other thing they've done particularly well, I think, is retail presence and internal engagement, which is talking to everybody in their sites, in their stores, across the business internally, really leveraging their own assets to talk to consumers about it as well, to mean that people really want to sign up to the program and they have a great experience and they teach them through it. And then one that I've just seen, topical launch in Great Britain that's just launched. We're not privileged enough to work on it, though I will be calling them My Dyas. So Robert Dyas is like a British high street staple store. It does homewares. If you need a mop, you go to Robert Dyas. If you need batteries, you go to Robert Dyas. If you need linen stuff or stuff for the bathroom or gardening stuff, you go to Robert Dyas. There's one on my local high street. I'm in it at least once or twice a week. Really lovely homeware stall, a real loved by the British people, kind of a high street. It's everywhere. And actually they've just launched My Dyas, and I think what they've done really nicely, and I'm watching them in their first 90 days, is they've done a really strong sign up offer. So you get 200 points instantly on sign up. It's a really good user journey, really good point of sale presence in all their retail sites and on their online. So they're really focused on member acquisition, and you can see that singular focus in everything that they're doing. So I'm interested to see what their first 90 days, but it's nice to have a live one that actually we can watch.
Thank you so much for sharing all those case studies with us. I particularly enjoy the idea of having this learning loop whenever you have international loyalty program. And then you can you have those different teams that operate in different markets in slightly different way, and then you can learn so much so fast. So this is a great tip.
Yeah, and what works and what doesn't work, I think, is a really nice tip. And for everybody who knows me, I love a cautionary tale. I'm a pure strategist. I love it when you have a hypothesis and you test it and you've got it wrong. Like that to me is as good as when you get it, test it and you've got it right, because then actually you really learn and you really see what works. So I love that, to looking to the other markets for, what's working, but also what isn't working. And I wasn't part of the team that obviously came up with the global loyalty Lidl strategy, but I'm sure that a large part of it was looking all the big grocery programs and going, no, we don't want points. And that was their cautionary tale. So I think that would be another top tip, which is to look out for what's good and would work for your business, but also to look out for what isn't right for you and think about why it isn't. And some of the greatest ideas can come from the cautionary tale, I think.
Definitely. I also show this philosophy of actually learning by doing. So you just start doing something and then you learn along the way.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, because you said that, retail is close to your heart. So if you could perhaps give some tips for people who operate in retail, what would be the tips for first 90 days?
Oh, goodness, that's a challenge, isn't it? Because I think it's a good one, though, because retail is so different. There's online retail, there's by sectors, by categories. I think it's such an interesting area. And actually, everybody's retail model is so different. I imagine, however, those same commonalities that we talked about earlier apply irrespective of your program and your sector, which is, check it works, and check it works if you're in retail for everybody. So check it works for online, check it works for in-store if you're omnichannel. Check that the people who are in your sites and who are actually on the front line, your customer services teams, understand it, and that actually they experience it as well, so that they really know how it works and they can help people in that critical kind of onboarding journey. That first 90 days of a program, you would hope that it will be all your loyal customers who already love you, who like you, who sign up really quickly. So although it's new, you need it to work really well. That's your biggest opportunity for member acquisition. So make sure it works, and then start to learn, start to see what's working, but making sure that you take that time to sit back and listen. Retail can be fierce. We've all been in those Monday morning sales meetings. How did we do last week? What are we going to change? What are we targeting? In those kind of trading businesses, you just need to make sure that loyalty has that fit, but also that slightly longer term view.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience before we finish?
First 90 days. I think I've talked about the main things, which is really, learn to your audience, learn what's working, celebrate your achievement. Don't forget to take a moment to kind of, really enjoy what you've created, and really make sure that you're reporting on those big KPIs, because, a loyalty program can be a big investment for a business, and your internal stakeholders need to see the value of what you're bringing as quickly as they can, so they go, actually, yeah, this is a really good investment. Probably the only other thing I'd say as well, actually, you have to forgive me because I am an ultimate loyalty nerd, is about the presentation of that, and actually how important it is to get a good dashboard, how important it is to get a graphic presentation of the data that can be shared broadly, so that no matter where you are in the business, you can see how well it's doing and actually what the benefit to them is. I think that's one of the things I've really learned from working with our latest kind of Vodafone lead on Very Me Rewards for Vodafone, is actually making sure that you're always thinking in those internal stakeholder conversations. What's the benefit to them? How does what you're doing help them achieve their goals bigger and better? And I think that's been an interesting thing to think about. So good presentation of data and reporting, but also what's in it for them.
Brilliant. I'm going to take it to the podcast project at Open Loyalty. So I'm definitely make sure that, there is a cool dashboard available for everyone at the team, and we exactly know what is happening. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Very welcome. Oh, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you for having me. And if anyone would like to follow up, please, or needs any more information or wants any of the research, please just, get me through the details on the podcast or through LinkedIn. I'm really happy to answer any questions anyone's got.
Nice. This episode brought us some fantastic tips and awesome case studies. Now, let's wrap up with a few housekeeping items. First, you'll find helpful links in the episode description. Second, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter for more valuable content related to this podcast. And as always, stay tuned for the next episode. Have a great day, everyone. The Loyalty Program Builders podcast is brought to you by the team at Open Loyalty, the world's most flexible loyalty software for creating personalized loyalty and gamification programs fast and at scale.